Hello again, algebra students. This is the first video of our new unit on rational exponents and radical functions. And in this first lesson, we're going to be looking at how to evaluate nth roots and use rational exponents. To do that, we're going to look at a word problem first. Biology problem here. A study determined that the weight W in grams of coral cod that looks something like this near Palawan Island in the Philippines can be modeled or approximated using this model. W, the weight, is equal to 0.0167 times L, the coral cod's length in centimeters, cubed. And then we're told to estimate the length of a coral cod that weighs 200 grams. With a word problem like this, I have to figure out where do I put the numbers. It's nice of them to give me a formula. So let's see, estimate the length. All right, the length means I don't know what L is. Then it says a coral cod that weighs 200 grams. Well, that means 200 would go right here. I'm going to start by writing out my equation. 200 is equal to 0.0167 times L cubed. And then I'm going to go ahead and solve for L. I have one variable I can solve by getting it all by itself. My first step in this case would be to divide. I have L cubed times 0.0167, so we'll do the inverse of that. So I divide by 0.0167 on both sides. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I type that into my calculator. 200 divided by, let's see if this works here, 0.0167. I get 11,000 some. Okay, real big number. Keep that in mind. I'm going to go back to our notes here. So what that's saying then is we're saying that L cubed, which is now by itself, is equal to around 11,976 and some change, so 0.04, 0.05, we can do that, 0.05. So now my job is I have to get L by itself. Well, L to the third power equals this big 11,000 number. Now, we've had other problems in the past where, as we worked through, we had answers that looked something like this. Let's say x squared was equal to 16. We got to a point like that, right? And to solve that, there was one more step. I had to undo the squaring of x. Now, to undo the squaring of x, we would take a square root. So, over here, I have L is cubed. I'll have to undo the cubing of L. So, if undoing the square of x was using a square root, undoing the cube of L will be using the cube root. So what happens is I draw that radical symbol, but I tuck a little 3 right in the notch. So that's going to now mean the cube root, meaning what did I cube, what did I raise to the third power to get this big number? So that's going to leave me with just L over here. Now again, this is something that I'm going to go ahead and type into my calculator. I'm going to show you how, a couple of different ways. First of all, so square root button is right here. The cube root button exists in a couple places. You could go to the math menu, and the fourth option, this little 3 with the root symbol, would be the cube root. So I could do that. Would be one way to do it. If this works, come on. Slow down. Here we go. Cube root. All right. Cube root of, and then I type the number in there. Now, because I left the answer here, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to use the previous answer and put it right here. To do that, I hit second, and then right down here above the negative sign, you see ANS, that means the previous answer. So by hitting second and then that little negative sign, that brings the previous answer and puts it into my cube root symbol. With the right arrow to get on the outside, and then I hit enter to evaluate it, and up with 22.88 or so. I'll go ahead and write that down here for our answer. So L is equal to 22.88. Label on this, well, the length was labeled in centimeters. So I'll go ahead and put a little cm right on this. So that's how long, 22.88 centimeters long. That's how big our coral cod is. Another way to do that on your calculator, I could use the math button and then go to this fifth option. So there's a little, and you could physically type in a 3 into that little box. So tell it to take the cube root of, the 11,976 number. We'll go 0.05 and round it. Hit enter. Basically the same thing, a little bit off once we get into like the 6th decimal place, but still good. So, a couple ways of doing that. Now, we talked about that was the cube root. Just want to put a couple things down here for you that you can write down in your notes. So that was using a cube root. To remind you, a square root is something like this. So if I have 2 squared is equal to 4, that means that the square root of 4 is equal to 2. Hopefully that makes sense. If I squared something to get this, when I take the square root of that number, I get whatever was squared in the beginning. Cube root will work in the same way. Let's say I have 2 cubed, or 2 to the 3rd power. 3 2's multiplied together, that equals 8. Well, that means that the cube root of 8 is equal to 2, because that's what I multiplied 3 times to get 8. In general, using nth roots, if I have b raised to the nth power, and it equals a, some other number, that would mean that the nth root of a is equal to b. So the nth root, now we have names for these things. We call this, come on here, being a little bit slow. It's all right, bear with it. We call that the index. Oh boy. All right, we're back after a little technical difficulty. So as I was saying, this n that's right here, we call that the index of the radical. The index is telling me which root I'm taking. Okay, so if there's a little 3 there for the index, that means I'm taking the 3rd root. If there's nothing there, it's assumed to be a square root. Okay, so if I have, the 4th root of 64, 4 is the index of that radical. Maybe I want the 8th root of x to the 16th. Well, in that case, 8 would be the index of the radical. We're taking the 8th root. So that's how nth roots work. Now, in the next video, we're going to look at something a little bit different that's related to this, but we'll leave that for now. So, thank you.